Hello, this is Steven R, and yes, we are back with another top 10 video. Today, we will be doing the top 10 gangsters from movies. If you recall, a while back, I did top 10 gangsters from TV shows. Today, I'll be doing top 10 gangsters from movies. Now, keep in mind, just like with the previous one, this is all purely subjective and personal opinion. I also want to clarify that this list will only be featuring performances of fictional gangsters, so no portrayals of real life ones. That is saved for another video to be done later down the line. So without any further ado, like I always do, I want to kick off with an honorable mention, or in this case, honorable mentions. The honorable mention goes to the Dick Tracy gangsters from the 1990 film Dick Tracy. Now, Dick Tracy is, of course, a very little-known comic, well, to mainstream at least, comic character, but he was huge in his day, and in many ways he's still a pop culture icon, but he's known for more old-school comic book people. Anyway, so in the film, and essentially in the comic, Dick Tracy is a police detective who goes up against a bizarre rogues gallery of deformed gangsters. Now, despite what you may think about the movie, one thing I always give this movie credit for and huge praise for is the cinematography and the design of the characters. It's literally like these characters jumped out of their comic strip onto the screen. The gangsters you see here are some of them from the film and some of the best from the Dick Tracy rogues gallery. Big Boy, Flat Top, Itchy, Influence, Prune Face, and Breathless Mahoney. Now, the reason why I put them in as an honorable mention because they because A, they kind of don't really get to do much, kind of, but also both their role in the film is not really that huge and grand scale, and it's almost, and the whole thing is like a love letter. And as a result, for me, loving comic book gangsters, how could I not at least give these guys a shout out? So with that out of the way, let's actually get into the top 10. Kicking off our list at number 10. Roman the Black Masked Sionis from Birds of Prey. Now this film recently came out, I think it was a year ago, and honestly, I really enjoyed the film, and one of my favorite bits, of course, was finally Black Mask having his proper live-action debut. Now, this is not the first time we've had him in live-action. We actually had a character kind of similar called the Mask in Gotham, which was basically Roman Sionis' father, Richard. Here, the character's finally made his proper live-action debut, and the character has also once again made his live-action debut on the TV show Batwoman. And we can't wait to see with more about that character down the line. Now, in this movie, Roman Sionis is portrayed as being a more colorful, eccentric gangster. Ironically, he's not really called the Black Mask that often, just Sionis. And his backstory is completely different to that in the comics. Like I said, Black Mask's backstory in the comics is completely convoluted. And it's almost a kind of mess. Here, it's more simple. Here, he was basically a part of the rich family of the Sionis before he got kicked out of his family company and basically family home. Living on the street, he had to pretty much fight for himself and build this criminal empire. He's almost completely psychotic, a little bit bonkers in the head, totally funny off the rails. He doesn't wear the mask that often in the film also, which I admit is a little bit of a shame. Although he does get to wear it at the end of the film, and for me, it was worth it for him to see that image of the Black Mask finally in live action, all his glory. Ian McGregor, who plays Black Mask, and if that actor's name sound familiar, he should. He played the younger Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars prequels films. His performance here is absolutely colorful. Not comic accurate, I will say, not comic accurate, but it is a fun performance nonetheless. And again, I have a huge soft spot for those type of gangsters, so I had to give him a shout out. And as a result, he's at number 10. He's really fun, and even though they don't play up the mask gimmick that well, as I think they should have, he's still fun and entertainable, and does portray some of the comic accurateness from the Black Mask, his sarcastic personality, and his ruthlessness and obsession for torture is present there. I wish they added more stuff, but other than that, he's a pretty good this is a pretty good interpretation. Number 9. Another comic book gangster, Billy Rossetti, aka Jigsaw from The Punisher Warzone. For me, I think The Punisher Warzone is a completely underrated movie. People say it's terrible, but for me, I felt it is a good Punisher movie. And for me, up until I think the Netflix Punisher series, this is the most comic accurate Punisher you could get. And what makes it even best is they actually use a proper villain from the Punisher's Rogues Gallery, Jigsaw. Here in the movie, we see Billy at the beginning, before his disfigurement, as Billy the Beaut, a rising star, a rising mobster in a notorious crime family. And after basically an encounter with the Punisher, left him horribly disfigured and became Jigsaw. Now, what I give credit that this film did, compared to what we got in the Punisher TV show, this is a comic accurate Jigsaw. He is a gangster who is disfigured, completely off the rails, and has grown a little bit of an obsession with the Punisher. Also, and I like that. He also has a very colorful clothing, and here he is absolutely comic accurate. And that's all I can say. He is comic accurate. Also, his interesting plan here, first off, he kind of wants to consolidate, again, he's a gangster, so he wants to consolidate power. But he also wants to get revenge on Castle for disfiguring him, and basically just become like the biggest crime lord in the city. And he also, this character fits so well with the gritty atmosphere that this film goes for. So I really love that. Anyway, he's at number 9. Coming in at number 8. John Wick from the John Wick series. Didn't expect this guy. He's more of an assassin than a gangster, but hear me out. John Wick, portrayed by Keanu Reeves, aka the Boogeyman, is a notorious hitman well known in the nationwide criminal underworld. Nationwide. He's not, and I'm guessing he's from the Russian mob. In the film series, well, basically, in the first film, he's basically retired and trying to live a normal life, but he's had a run of bad luck. His wife has tragically passed away, and the only thing he has left to remember her by is a pet dog. But the son of a notorious Russian gangster, and the son is an all-around prick, comes in, steals his car, kills his dog, and mad with vengeance, goes after him. And the underworld is both in fear of him, but also respects him. Now, like I said, he's technically not really a gangster. He's more of a hitman / assassin. But I consider him a gangster. After all, hitmen and assassins are part of the criminal underworld, and they can sometimes go into the gangster territory. And honestly, I like how Keanu Reeves portrays John Wick here. Now, first off, John Wick is incredibly feared by many, and respected by many. But he doesn't flaunt it. He acts almost humble, but he's also no pushover. I also like how his skills are. Yes, he's a skilled fighter, but I also like for some of the guys he goes up with, it's a struggle to take him down. And again, it shows a more realistic and brutal fight. And honestly, I'm actually believe that Keanu Reeves was perfect for this role. Now, I've heard there is a 4th film in the works. And I will say this, hopefully the 4th film is the end one, because I don't see how long he can keep this franchise going with this one character. I don't see it lasting that long. But hey, I'm taking a gamble putting him on the list, because people say, well, he's not really a proper mobster, or hitman. He's more of a hitman. But you know what, for me, I'm kind of bending the rules here, so I include him at number 8. The reason why it's at number 8, because there are other gangsters I think are more actual gangsters. And he's ahead of the other 2 because they're more comic book characters rather than actual mobsters. But anyway, he's at number 8. Coming in at number 7. Frank Costello from The Departed. No, this is not the real-life mobster Frank Costello. That's a different guy. The Departed was a film directed by Martin Scorsese, and I believe this film was the one that won him an Academy Award for Best Director, which he so deserves, and so has deserved it. In the film, Frank Costello is an Irish mobster and is basically partly inspired by Whitey Bulger, a notorious gangster from Boston. In fact, the film takes place in Boston. Here, he is a pretty much shown to be kind in one moment, brutally sadistic, and just an all-around creep in some cases. Jack Nicholson gives such a commanding presence and performance, and he is just scene-stealing. How he delivers his lines, how he is intimidating, and he is perfect for this role. Also, what makes him different to other mobsters, he's a rat. He's actually an informant, informing on rivals and even some of his own crew to get ahead. Plus, he has a mole within the department, and it's almost like a father-son relationship. For me, Frank Costello here is based off a real-life gangster. And this is one of, arguably, Jack Nicholson's most iconic performances, and I'm really glad that they cast him for this role. He just owns it. Number 6. Frank White, from King of New York. Now, this is not the first time we've seen Christopher Walken in a gangster movie. In fact, he had a very small cameo in True Romance as a notorious Sicilian mobster. But that short scene for me is nothing compared to him in the leading role in this one. Here, he's a notorious gangster who's come out and is essentially coming to take control of the criminal underworld. It's a classic narrative of a notorious gangster with a big reputation coming back and building his criminal empire. But he's also a bit of a Robin Hood. Yes, he's getting into the drug trade, but he uses some of this money to help charities and sort of, fuel his persona here. I mean, for me, Christopher Walken, in any film, is for me worth it. Now, to be fair, he's more known for cameos now, but here, was reasons why he was so great in either leading or supporting roles. And he is and just like many, he's scene stealing. I know I say that a lot, but so many actors are such screen stealers, you just can't help but acknowledge it. He is absolutely fantastic. And who's next? Number 5, Nino Brown from New Jack City. Oh my god, this film is so good. It's one of the many films that kicked off the hood, the hood genre. Nino Brown is basically a notorious, essentially drug dealer building up a criminal empire on drug dealing. I like how just like Frank Costello, who was based off the real life gangster Whitey Bulger. This guy, for me, was clearly based on Frank Lucas. And Wesley Snipes here does a fantastic performance here. He's a smooth talker, a wisecracker, and leads his gang kind of like a brotherhood. But eventually, the whole thing falls apart because of first off, a rivalry with the Italians. That's always going to be a factor for any gangster, both in movies and in real life. Because why? The Italians have always been structured. Second, infighting begins as eventually he begins to kind of distrust in some of his employees. Kind of. And number 3, he underestimates the guys that go up against him. Now, I will admit, he eventually does avoid jail time, but he does get his comeuppance. How? I won't tell you. And another thing I like about him is the smooth talker he is. And this just goes to show that he's more of someone more in line with the hood, the more street gangs, yet he has a bit of this mobster persona. But for me, Wesley Snipes, this is just a good performance here. And honestly, this film alone is worth watching. Not only for this performance, but also with a bit of commentary on living in the hood. Also, a bit of a drug epidemic, and just the soundtrack. The music is so catchy. Give it a watch. Give this movie a watch. just to see this performance, and I tell you, you will not be disappointed. Number 4, Sam Ace Rothstein, Casino. An actor with the notorious for playing both criminals and mobsters. Robert De Niro literally has portrayed so many great gangster characters. And I decided to give it to his role in Casino as Sam Ace Rothstein, a mob, essentially an associate to the mob, and runs all the casinos. Sharply dressed, mathematic. Ironically, this is more toned down than what we're used to seeing with Robert De Niro with gangster roles, but this is just such a great performance here. I like how he's more of a smooth operator than we usually see De Niro. These sharp suits he wears, and how mathematically he's controlling the casino, making sure that it's running smoothly. He's running mob casinos, and plus he also works off well with an associate who was portrayed by Joe Pesci. This is just a really fantastic performance here, and it works so well in Casino. Now, like I said, I knew at some point on the list I had to include a Robert De Niro performance from a gangster. So I looked at all the ones he did. For me, this one stands out. I've always liked, ironically, his character here over what he did in Goodfellas. I know this is shocking. How could you say that? Hear me out. I like it here because it's kind of a little bit different. Still, he shares traits to what we usually see Robert De Niro in gangster roles, but it feels different, and he just feels more refined. True, he can be a tough guy, but he's not the more brutal tough guy that we used to see, and that's why I love this so much. Number 3, Tommy DeVito in Goodfellas. Speaking of Goodfellas, first off, this is arguably one of the greatest actors you could ever get to play the mobster. Joe Pesci portrays this guy as a fucking loose cannon. Tommy DeVito is an associate trying to be a member of the Lucchese crime family, but he's known for being short-tempered, quick to judgment, and an overall psychoticness. That scene where he's like, funny how? That is just how that whole scene goes from there. It's so intense. Him randomly killing people when he feels like his ego has been insulted. He is in many ways a real life mob guy. Tough, completely off his rocker, and a legit psychopath. Now, just like Sam Ace Rothstein, who was based off a real-life gangster, the same can be said here. He was also based off a real-life gangster. And despite the fact that also Joe Pesci also appeared in Casino with Robert De Niro as a gangster of the same kind of role. But this is where it started. And if you wonder why Joe Pesci is always great in gangster roles, look at this performance. It came from this film. And it's just so good. So good. Give Goodfellas a watch. And this performance won Joe Pesci, I think, an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and he deserved it. Give this film a watch. Just for arguably one of the most psychotic gangsters you'll see in cinema history. Number 2, Tony Montana from Scarface. Scarface was actually a remake of an early 1930s gangster movie of the same name, though changed the setting. We go from the roaring 20s to the 80s. We go from the Prohibition era to the notorious drug trade in, I think, Miami. Yeah, it is Miami. And what makes it all work? Al Pacino. Just like Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, Al Pacino's played so many gangster characters across the board, such as Michael Corleone, but I feel that his best performance came as Tony Montana, a man who pretty much, he said it himself, first you get the money, then you get the power. Once you get the power, then you get the woman. This is one of the most iconic gangster films, probably of all time, and it goes to this performance. Tony Montana is a Cuban immigrant who comes to America to achieve the American dream, but gets involved in the criminal underworld, specifically the cocaine trade, and eventually rises to become one of the most notorious notorious cocaine or drug kingpins in Miami. And I like how he worked his way to the top. He is smart. He has charisma, and he has the drive. But once he reaches the top, the usual narrative is things begin to fall apart. Mostly due to ego, distrust, the cops closing in. But unlike most, when the cops or even his enemies closing in, he does not back down, giving cinema's most haunting performance, and honestly one of Al Pacino's most iconic performances. I put this above Michael Corleone because it is so different. It is so screen-stealing, and it is so haunting. So many quotable lines came from this. Say hello to my little friend. And this has been imitated in so much mediums. Video games, TV shows, and other movies, and it all came from here. Honestly, this is Al Pacino's best gangster role of all time, hands down. I put this above Michael Corleone. That's how good I think this performance is. But we're near the end of the list, so who's number one? Well, number one is Vito Corleone from The Godfather. Was there ever any doubt? Arguably taking top not just honors on our list, but top legends on our list. Vito Corleone is one of the most iconic characters in cinema history. Vito Corleone is the head of the notorious Corleone crime family in New York. He is so parodied. He's so iconic. Marlon Brando, one of cinema's greatest actors of all time, gives one of his best performances, and we have arguably seen one of the greatest characters ever put to screen. Vito Corleone is a ruthless mafia don, but he lives by a set of codes. His loyalty to above friends and family. Ruthless when he needs to be, and merciful when he wants to be. He is truly an icon. Inspired so many characters. And won an Oscar for this performance. And I do not doubt it. Marlon Brando portrays this character as, honestly, as a kind grandfather, even though he's a mafia godfather. Again, this guy was based off a lot of gangsters, and this performance was basically what inspired many gangsters on the streets at the time to carry themselves with a bit more dignity. And when you see mafia dons, this is who you picture. Vito Corleone, a man who was wise, a man who lives by a set of rules, a man who was always, would gladly be reasoned. He holds so much power, and he also how he presents himself and how he treats others. No other gangster can take that much honor than Vito Corleone. He is number one. He is the greatest gangster in movie and also TV, any other medium you can think of. Vito Corleone is number one, and he's certainly number one on this list. And there we have it. That was top 10 gangsters from movies. Do you agree? Which other gangsters would you have included on this list? What other performances have we missed? Write those down in the comments. And until next time, this has been the Steven Hour. And ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.